75 million people. That's how many human beings died in World War II. More than the entire population of present-day France. But here's what they don't teach you in school. World War II didn't just happen. It was built, brick by brick, bad decision by bad decision, over 2 decades. By the time the first shot was fired in 1939, the war had already been inevitable for years. Today, we're going back to the beginning. The humiliation, the hunger, the rage, the rise of monsters. This is the real background of World War II, and once you understand it, you'll never see the war the same way again.
Welcome back to our channel, The History Scroll. If you're new here, subscribe now. Every week, we uncover the history they glossed over in your textbooks. Let's get into it. To understand World War II, you must first understand World War I and the catastrophic way it ended. To watch the video on World War I, we have made an earlier video on our channel. When World War I finally stopped in November 1918, after 4 years of industrial slaughter, Europe was completely broken. 17 million people were dead. Entire generations of young men wiped out. Cities reduced to rubble. Economies in ruins. Empires collapsed. And then the victorious powers, Britain, France, and the United States, sat down in Paris to decide what the new world would look like. What came out of those meetings was called the Treaty of Versailles, signed in June 1919. And it may be the single most catastrophic peace deal in human history.
The Treaty of Versailles did several things to Germany. First, it forced Germany to accept full blame for World War I. This was called the War Guilt Clause, Article 231. Germany had to sign a document saying, "We started this. We are responsible for everything." Most Germans believed this was a lie, a humiliation forced upon them by their enemies. Second, Germany lost 13% of its territory and 10% of its population. Regions like Alsace-Lorraine went to France. The Polish corridor was carved out, physically separating part of Germany from the rest. Third, Germany's military was crippled. Their army was limited to just 100,000 men. No air force, severely limited navy. For a nation that had once been one of the greatest military powers on Earth, this was devastating. Fourth, and perhaps most damaging, Germany was handed a reparations bill of 132 billion gold marks, an almost incomprehensible amount of money. The message from the victors was clear. You lost, you pay. For everything. Forever. The German people didn't just feel defeated. They felt humiliated, betrayed, and robbed. And that humiliation was the soil in which something very dark was about to grow.
The 1920s in Germany were a nightmare. To pay its debts, Germany simply printed more money. The result? Hyperinflation so extreme, it became almost absurd. By 1923, a single loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks. People would bring wheelbarrows full of cash just to buy groceries. Life savings? Gone. Overnight. Middle-class families who had worked their entire lives suddenly had nothing. Just when things began to slightly stabilize, the Great Depression hit in 1929. Wall Street crashed. American banks called in loans from Europe. The German economy, which had been barely recovering, collapsed again. By 1932, over 6 million Germans were unemployed. That was roughly 30% of the workforce. People were starving, desperate, angry. And desperate, angry people start looking for someone to blame. Adolf Hitler was born in Austria in 1889. He was a failed artist, a World War I veteran, a man who felt the world had wronged him. He joined a small political party in Munich in 1919, the German Workers' Party, which later became the National Socialist German Workers' Party. the Nazis. Hitler had one extraordinary ability. He could speak. Not just speak, he could ignite a room. He took every frustration, every humiliation, every economic pain that ordinary Germans felt, and he gave it a face. He told them, "It's not your fault. You were stabbed in the back by the Jews, by the communists, by weak politicians, by foreign powers. Germany was great. Germany will be great again. Follow me." His message spread like wildfire through a broken nation. In 1923, Hitler attempted a coup, the beer hall putsch in Munich. It failed. He was arrested, sent to prison. Many thought that was the end of Adolf Hitler. They were catastrophically wrong. In prison, Hitler wrote Mein Kampf, My Struggle, laying out his entire ideology. Racial superiority, German expansion, the elimination of Jews. It was all there, in writing, published for the world to read. And the world didn't take it seriously enough. By 1932, the Nazi Party was the largest party in the German parliament. On January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. Within months, he had dismantled democracy, eliminated political opponents, and declared himself Führer, absolute leader of the German Reich. The monster was no longer at the gates. He was inside.
Germany wasn't alone in its dangerous shift. In Italy, Benito Mussolini had already established a fascist dictatorship by 1925, becoming Hitler's ideological inspiration and eventual ally. In Japan, the military had taken control of the government and launched an aggressive expansion across Asia, invading Manchuria in 1931 and launching a brutal war against China in 1937. The world was watching all of this and doing almost nothing. Britain and France, exhausted by World War I and desperate to avoid another, adopted a policy called appeasement. Give Hitler what he wants, maybe he'll stop. When Hitler remilitarized the Rhineland in 1936, in direct violation of Versailles, Britain and France protested. That was it. Just protested. When Hitler annexed Austria in March 1938, claiming all Germans should be united under one Reich, Britain and France objected. Then accepted it. Then came Czechoslovakia. Hitler demanded the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia with a large German population. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain flew to Munich to negotiate with Hitler personally. He came back waving a piece of paper and declared, "Peace for our time." 6 months later, Hitler took the rest of Czechoslovakia. Appeasement had failed. Completely, catastrophically failed.
Here's what's so haunting about the background of World War II. It wasn't inevitable. At so many points, someone could have stopped it. If the Treaty of Versailles hadn't been so brutal, maybe Hitler never rises. If the world had taken Mein Kampf seriously, maybe he stopped early. If Britain and France had stood firm at the Rhineland, maybe the war never happens. Instead, a series of mistakes, miscalculations, and deliberate ignorance created a catastrophe that killed 75 million people. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And understanding how the world sleepwalked into its deadliest conflict might be the most important lesson we can ever learn.
That's the background of World War II. The humiliation, the hunger, the broken promises, and the men who exploited it all. In our next video, we'll cover the actual outbreak of war, from the fall of Poland to the fall of France. You will not want to miss it. If this video hit different, share it with someone who loves history. Like, subscribe, and drop in the comments, which part of World War II history do you want us to cover next? I'll see you in the next one.